Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review. Today I'm talking about the newest film in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now sorry for getting this video out a little bit later than usual. I've been really busy in the past weekend, a lot of personal stuff going on. Plus, in the process, I saw this movie twice, because the first time I saw it, I went to a really late show, and to be honest, was dozing off like throughout the entire thing just because of how exhausted I was. So I saw it again so I can be wide awake and get a clear picture of the film. So, going into this movie, if you've seen my videos, you know, die-hard Godzilla fan, I was so excited for this movie. It's one of my most anticipated films of the year. I do like the first film in the series, the 2014 reboot that they did. I know a lot of people don't, it's a very divisive movie, but I do like it. I rewatched it actually in preparation for this one, and I still enjoy it despite its flaws. Though if you watch the review I did for it, like 5 years ago, I liked it a lot more then than I do now. But I still think it's a solid movie. So yeah, going to this one, super hyped. And well, this movie has been getting trashed by critics, and even box office wise, isn't doing so great. So what do I think of it? I liked it. I have issues with it. It's not a perfect movie. It has a lot of flaws, and I feel there's a lot of stuff that could have been done better. But for the most part, this was a pretty entertaining monster movie. Definitely if you were disappointed with the first movie, you're gonna like this one a lot better, because yeah, this one is full of monster action. Like, it's constant action, just in general. This movie, like, never lets up. It's constantly moving, which is actually part of my flaws I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of monster action, and the monster action is handled, for the most part, pretty well. It's just fun seeing these characters that I've been seeing for years as a kid, you know, on the big screen in this huge, big budget movie with modern CGI. Like, it was fantastic. Seeing Godzilla fighting Ghidorah was a lot of fun, you know, and there's a lot of, like, homages to the original movies. Michael Dougherty, the co-writer and director of this movie, is clearly a Godzilla fan, and that shines through. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie didn't do so well box office wise, that it's a movie that's really geared towards the fans of the franchise, and less so the general audience. Like the first, the 2014 film, the Gareth Edwards one, was more so like trying to appeal to a wide audience, you know, and try to like be smaller scale, and was trying to be a lot more accessible to people who aren't really fans of this franchise and this genre. Whereas this one is just like, no, we're gonna have monsters constantly fighting, we're gonna have a lot of like silly plot stuff, you know, it's gonna feel like an old school Godzilla movie, and for the most part it does. Flaws with the film, okay, there's quite a few. So, the storyline for this movie, I don't want to really critique the plot of a Godzilla movie, because that's not why we're here. That's never the strong suit, that's never the main focus, even though the story is always what gets more screen time than the monsters in these movies. It's never, like, the focus. It's never why you're there. So yeah, the story in this movie is weak. It's really weak. The characters are really weak and very just by the numbers, very basic. All well acted though. I really like the cast in this movie. They're all a bunch of really good actors. Vera Farmiga, Charles Dance, Millie Bobby Brown. I like them all as actors. But my problem plot-wise is that there's just certain character moments and characters' motivations that are just stupid. And just like kind of nonsensical. And there's stuff like with the Kyle Chandler character, the husband or the ex-husband. Every scene is him just like taking control of everything and like knowing exactly what to do and how to handle like every situation. And I get it, they like explain that he's kind of like an animal expert, so he kind of like, you know, uses that knowledge with the monsters. I understand that, but it really made a lot of the other people feel kind of dumb, because they're constantly like, oh, let's do this, and he's just like, no, that's not what's happening, this is what's happening. They're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then something else happens, they're like, let's do that. And he's like, no, because this is actually what's happening. And they're like, oh, yeah. And you're just like, how do these people not know this? Like, they've been studying monsters for the past 5 years. They should kind of have this figured out. And it was like, every scene with this character just felt like plot convenience, that he knows all this stuff. Also, I feel like the plot for this movie does a lot. This movie throws a lot at you. And yeah, you can interpret it as the movie's like trying to do too much. But I mostly look at it as, it's just a complicated way of telling a simple story. Because I feel like the general plot for this movie could have been so much simpler and so much more streamlined, that the version we got, they kept adding in all these extra elements that we just didn't need. You know what I mean? A lot of extra plot elements where I'm just like, you could just streamline that, had this be the simple explanation, and then move on, and it would have been a lot simpler. You know, also pacing, like I said, this movie never lets up. which is kind of a flaw. Like, you never, like, the movie never really breathes. Like, every time you think they're gonna have a character moment and let it breathe, it only lasts about a couple minutes, then we're back to moving, and it's constantly moving all over the place. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in here that you want to, like, explore and spend more time with, but they just gloss over it because they got to get to the next big, like, beats and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I wanted to see more of that, but okay, that's it. And the first act of this movie was just moving very fast and was a lot of exposition. You know, and I felt like it was a little too much. The movie needed kind of a more of a slower build to it, in my opinion. Like, it felt like they were just like, oh crap, people complained about no monsters in the last one. We gotta get the monsters as fast as we can. Move this first act along really quickly. You know, instead of just like stopping and taking his time and kind of introducing everything and then easing our way into the crazy action. It just kind of was just like, just craziness all at once, and I felt that didn't quite work. And then we get to the monsters, which I'm gonna, you know, praise and fanboy out about in a second. But I will have to admit, like, I am bummed at how some of the monster fight scenes were handled. There's never, like, a clear fight scene in daylight. It's either, like, in the rain or at night or in the snow. And I'm like, why can't we just have, like, at least one fight in the daylight? Even Kong Skull Island did that. It had, you know, a bunch of fight scenes in the daylight, and they looked a lot better than some of the stuff in here. And also, some of the action sequences are very shaky cam, very quick cutting and moving really fast, you know, and that first action, like, monster fight scene, I didn't like at all. Like, it was just too much, too shaky, like all over the place. I feel like the shots could have been done a lot better. But moving on from that action scene, I feel like the monster fights get better and better as the movie progresses. And the one at the end is insanity. Also, this movie suffers from a problem I had with Aquaman, where there's just CGI overload at times. Like, there's moments where they're just throwing so much CGI, like, action at your face that you just kind of check out for a few minutes, and it's just mind-numbing. But those issues aside, the monster stuff is easily the highlight of the movie. That's the best stuff in this film. This is like a kaiju fan's dream, a lot of the stuff in here. Like, it's insanity, and it's wonderful. The best thing that could be said is that Michael Dougherty, like, really gets the characters right. There is one thing that Ghidorah does that, like, if I recall correctly, it's been a while since I've seen some of the later ones, but that's something that he couldn't do in the previous movies. But aside from that, like, all the characteristics of the monsters are right, all the sounds are right, all their roars and everything are right. I don't know if this is really a spoiler, they kind of reveal it, but if you're a fan of this stuff, you know what it is, so it's not really a spoiler. But, like, I feel like any other screenwriter would have just taken Ghidorah and made him another one of the Titans, you know, that's been hiding. And that's kind of what they do, but then they reveal that, no, he is an alien. And I feel like any other movie would just ignore the alien part and be like, yeah, whatever, he's just a Titan, you know, who cares? But no, they're like, no, he's an alien, because that's what we've been in all the other mythology. And so I love that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of good nods and references to the older films that I really like seeing. Just kind of fan servicey moments, that's fun. And with, like, the CGI, it's really cool seeing, like, the monsters actually interacting with people, which is something you don't get very often, very, like, sparingly in the older films, due to, like, the technical limitations of guys in suits and stuff, you know. But, like, there's scenes where, like, you know, some of the monsters eat people, or some of them are going directly after people, and it's just really cool to see that, something you haven't really seen in the previous films. But in terms of the monsters, Ghidorah is the best part of this movie. Like, he stole the show from, like, his introduction, like, when he first appears and he reveals, like, the 3 heads, like, it's awesome, and he's one of the best characters in this movie. I loved Ghidorah. Mothra and Rodan are really cool, but they're kind of underutilized. They really don't have a whole lot to do in the movie, which is kind of a bummer. Like, it really is Godzilla versus Ghidorah. And then there's some Mothra and Rodan stuff in there, so that was kind of a bummer. But what we got of them was really good. I love the scene where Rodan emerges from the volcano and you see him, like, destroying all these planes and stuff. Like, I thought that sequence was really fun. So yeah, the monster stuff is a definite highlight. There's a lot of great stuff with them, and that's the main, like, attraction to the movie. Though I have heard some complaints that there's not enough monster action in the movie still, and I'm like, really? Like, did we watch the same movie? Like, that's when I really see that people haven't really seen the older Godzilla movies, because I can understand having issues with the 2014 one and Godzilla's lack of screen time, because yeah, he was underutilized compared to other Godzilla movies, but I feel like this one hits the normal amounts that, like, Godzilla movies have of Godzilla, like, a monster screen time. So yeah, there are some stretches without Godzilla, but, like, when you do get him and he is fighting other monsters, it's everything you wanted, and it's, like, so much more than, especially in the 2014 one, that I'm like, I don't know how you can have a problem with that and how that could be an issue, because I don't think that's the problem with this movie. It's definitely the least of this movie's issues. So now I'm going to discuss some spoilers. There's a few spoiler points I want to discuss from this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, don't watch this part, don't watch any further. See the movie, help it out, because it's really underperforming. That's really a bummer, even with the flaws of this movie, and I don't think it's that great. It's still a bummer that it's not doing that great, but still, don't watch any further if you haven't seen the movie. So, for spoilers. Now, I want to go back to what I was saying, is that the plot was kind of an overcomplicated way of telling a simple story, and to me the biggest example of that is when they use the oxygen destroyer. Because first off, if anyone has seen the original Godzilla film, they know that the oxygen destroyer is a really important aspect of Godzilla mythology because that's the device they used to kill Godzilla in the original film. So it pops up in this movie, but it was such a throwaway sequence. It really kind of just felt like Michael Dougherty was just throwing in a reference, being like, hey, we could put the oxygen destroyer in here. Fans will like that. And just like, that to me just felt like a whole unnecessary bit that could have easily just been taken out and just been simplified as like Ghidorah beats Godzilla and kills him. Like, that's all you really needed, you know? And then also that would show how powerful Ghidorah is, that he can defeat Godzilla even after Godzilla's cut off his head, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't feel like we needed the whole oxygen destroyer thing to come in and like nuke him and then, you know, just like kill Godzilla, you know? It's like, I didn't feel that was really necessary. They could have just easily simplified it and streamlined it, and that's how I feel a lot of stuff was in this movie. And then also with stuff not being explored as much, yeah, that whole sequence I thought was really cool, where they go to revive Godzilla and they go underwater and find this sunken ancient land where these people worshipped Godzilla. It goes back thousands of years, and that's where they used to worship Godzilla. And then there's this like weird pocket of radiation. That's where Godzilla goes to heal himself. And I'm like, that's really clever. That's really unique. I like that. I wanted to see more of that explored, but it just quickly, you know, gets nuked so they can revive Godzilla. And it's like, oh, okay, but I like the idea, I like the parallels between Godzilla and Kong, because that's something that's very similar to what Kong has, and I like that concept, because that's how you're going to have the two kings going at it, you know? I like that idea, but there just wasn't enough of it. And also with that scene, Dr. Serizawa sacrifices himself, which part of me is kind of bummed because Serizawa is like one of the few characters I actually really like in these new movies. Like, he was like one of the few holdovers from the last one, and like, I like him. But I do kind of like the parallel, because in the original Godzilla film, Dr. Serizawa sacrifices himself to kill Godzilla, and then in this one, Dr. Serizawa sacrifices himself to revive Godzilla. And I'm like, huh, that's a clever parallel. I'll like that. I'll take it, you know? I mean, it's a lot better than Sally Hawkins' death in this movie. That, my God, I didn't even know it happened when I first saw it. Because Ghidorah came down, picked her up, and ate her. At first it looked like something just crushed her. And first off, I didn't tell who it was because it was moving so fast. I just saw a lady running and get crushed. It wasn't until afterwards where I had like the picture of her and it said deceased. I was like, oh, she died. Ooh. And I was like, wow, that's just kind of a crappy way. It felt very The Predator-esque with Sterling K. Brown's death. I'm like, oh, that happened? You know? So that wasn't handled too well. And one point in regards to not enough monster action that I can get behind is the fact that like so many monsters get unleashed at one point in this movie. And you see like, you know, footage of them destroying all these cities. But then that's it. And like, it kind of gets glossed over, like, oh, all these monsters are loose, try to stop them. Anyway, Godzilla and King Ghidorah, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I wanted to see more of that. Like, then also, like, the whole fact that basically Washington, D.C. is underwater, almost, you know? That was fascinating, and that would have been really cool if there was an action sequence set there. Like, you see people on boats and stuff like that. That would have been a really cool sequence. But again, it's just kind of glossed over. There's so much huge, massive, like, world-ending destruction in this movie that kind of just gets glossed over like it's nothing and just like forgotten. Like, oh, by the way, DC's underwater. Okay. Anyway, and I'm like, I want to see more of that. Or when we get to the big plot reveal of Vera Farmiga being the villain. One, her plan is dumb. Like, I just don't see how unleashing 17 monsters will bring balance to the world. But that scene itself, with her on a webcam, while also cutting between footage, is like stupid. But I do love at the end when Godzilla became the burning Godzilla, who was like pretty much on fire, which looked so sweet. I thought that was so cool. Very reminiscent of how he looked in Godzilla vs. Destroya. I got a lot of those type of vibes from it, except instead of in that movie where that's slowly killing him, this movie, it actually makes him stronger and more powerful. Another kind of cool parallel. Plus, I love the ending where all the monsters bow down to Godzilla because he's the true king. It really sets the stage for the conflict between Godzilla and Kong, and I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out. So those are just some spoiler points. I'm sure there's more I can delve into that I'll probably delve into at a later point in time. I don't know. Those are the main spoiler points I wanted to discuss. So overall, Godzilla King of the Monsters, heavily flawed, but a fun movie. Like, the monster action is great for the most part and really entertaining, and I love seeing that. It's just the character and their motivations are really weak, and like there's some pacing issues. It just moves way too fast. It makes it for a very flawed movie, but not nearly the awful movie that everyone else is making it out to be. Like, so many people are trashing this and ripping this movie apart, and I don't think it's that bad. It's just flawed, but I think you would enjoy it. Definitely if you're a Godzilla fan, you'll have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of entertainment value in this, and it's a fun time, but just not perfect, you know? So yeah, that's Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.